It started not with a bang, but with the sinister glow of flames against the night sky. In late 2024, a disturbing pattern of violence began to emerge on Australian soil, targeting the very heart of the nation's Jewish communities. On October 20th, Lewis's Continental Kitchen, a well-known kosher cafe in Sydney's Bondi, was deliberately set ablaze in an act of arson. This wasn't just an attack on a building, it was an assault on a community space, a place of gathering and cultural significance. The incident sent a chill through the local population, raising immediate fears that escalating global tensions were now spilling onto our streets, transforming abstract headlines into a tangible threat felt by ordinary Australians in their own neighbourhoods. The sense of unease deepened just a few weeks later. On December 6th, a far more audacious and symbolic attack took place in Melbourne. The Adass Israel Synagogue, a sacred building constructed in the 1960s by Holocaust survivors, was firebombed. Worshippers inside were forced to flee for their lives, escaping the flames that threatened to consume a monument built from the ashes of past persecution. This wasn't a random act of vandalism. The choice of target was deliberate, calculated to inflict maximum psychological pain on a community already grappling with a global surge in anti-Semitism. The attack on the synagogue was a horrifying message that no space, no matter how sacred, was safe from this imported hatred. These two events, separated by hundreds of kilometres but united by their hateful intent, marked a significant and worrying escalation. For many, it felt as though Australia's cherished social cohesion was being deliberately undermined. These were not simply crimes, they were acts of terror designed to sow discord and fear, turning neighbour against neighbour and shattering the sense of security that we so often take for granted. The question was no longer if foreign conflicts could reach us, but how they had managed to do so with such devastating precision, and more importantly, who was pulling the strings from thousands of miles away. The attacks prompted an immediate and widespread sense of outrage across the country, but they also left a lingering and deeply unsettling question. Why here? Australia prides itself on its multicultural fabric, a place where people from all corners of the globe can coexist peacefully. Yet these fires served as a stark and brutal reminder that we are not immune to the world's oldest hatreds. They demonstrated a new and frightening reality where shadowy foreign powers could allegedly reach into our suburbs, using violence to pursue their own geopolitical agendas and turning our peaceful communities into an unwilling battleground for distant conflicts, leaving everyone to wonder what might come next. In the aftermath of the fires, Australia's top intelligence and law enforcement agencies launched one of the most complex counter-terrorism investigations in recent memory. The Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, or ASIO, and the Australian Federal Police began the painstaking work of unravelling the network behind the attacks. It quickly became clear that this was not the work of lone extremists radicalised online. Instead, the evidence pointed towards a sophisticated state-sponsored operation. ASIO Director General Mike Burgess described the method as a layer cake of intermediaries, a complex web of proxies designed to obscure the ultimate source of the directive and provide plausible deniability to those at the top of the chain. The investigation revealed a chillingly professional command structure. According to intelligence officials, the orders for the attacks originated directly from commanders within Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a powerful branch of the Iranian military. The IRGC allegedly used overseas facilitators to relay instructions to a coordinator based outside Australia, who then activated a network on the ground. This network wasn't comprised of ideologically driven sleeper agents, but rather it reportedly included local actors, some with links to established organised crime gangs. This use of criminal proxies for a political end was a particularly alarming discovery, showing how foreign states can exploit existing criminal ecosystems to carry out hostile acts. The breakthrough came as police made a series of arrests. Counter-terrorism units in Victoria successfully charged 2 men in connection with the firebombing of the Adass Israel Synagogue, with a third arrest following in August 2025 as the net continued to tighten. These arrests provided investigators with the crucial human intelligence needed to piece together the entire chain of command, linking the men on the ground back through the layers of intermediaries all the way to their alleged sponsors in Tehran. The evidence was apparently so compelling and direct that it left the Australian government with little choice but to act decisively on the information presented by its security agencies. The findings presented a stark and undeniable conclusion. A foreign government had orchestrated acts of terror on Australian soil. This was not just foreign interference in our political process, it was the active importation of violence designed to intimidate a segment of the Australian population and fracture our society. The meticulous work of the AFP and ASIO had peeled back the layers of deception, exposing a direct line from the smouldering ruins of a Melbourne synagogue and a Sydney cafe to the highest echelons of the Iranian state. This revelation would force Australia to confront a diplomatic crisis unlike any it had faced in generations. Faced with incontrovertible evidence of state-sponsored arson, the Australian government responded with a force and clarity rarely seen in its diplomatic history. On August 26, 2025, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese stood before the nation and announced a series of measures that amounted to a profound rupture in relations with Iran. The centerpiece of the response was the expulsion of Iran's ambassador to Australia, Ahmad Sadeghi, along with 3 other senior Iranian diplomats. They were given just 7 days to leave the country. This move was historic. It was the first time Australia had expelled a foreign ambassador since the Second World War, signalling the absolute gravity of the situation. The government's actions did not stop at expelling Tehran's representatives. Simultaneously, Australia suspended all operations at its embassy in Tehran and began the process of withdrawing its own diplomatic staff. This was a necessary precaution, as the safety of Australian officials in Iran could no longer be guaranteed in the wake of such a dramatic diplomatic escalation. A stern travel advisory was issued, urging all Australians to leave Iran immediately and warning others not to travel there under any circumstances. The message was unequivocal. Australia was severing its diplomatic presence and holding Iran directly accountable for violating our sovereignty in the most egregious way possible. Beyond the immediate diplomatic fallout, the Prime Minister announced a significant long-term policy shift. The government would move to formally designate the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organisation. This would bring Australia into alignment with key allies like the United States and Canada, who have already taken this step. However, it presents a unique legal challenge, as current Australian law only permits the listing of non-state actors, not official arms of a foreign government. Consequently, the government has committed to fast-tracking amendments to the law, a move expected to receive broad bipartisan support in Parliament. This suite of actions represents a fundamental redrawing of Australia's posture towards state-sponsored aggression. By expelling diplomats, shuttering an embassy, and moving to prescribe a state military body as a terrorist group, Canberra has sent a powerful message to Iran and the rest of the world. It declared that Australia will not tolerate its soil being used as a staging ground for foreign-directed violence, and that the safety of its citizens and the cohesion of its society are non-negotiable. It was a bold and risky stand, one that firmly prioritised domestic security over diplomatic convention, setting the stage for an uncertain and tense future. The government's decisive actions were met with a mix of relief, praise, and anxiety across different communities in Australia. For the Jewish community, the move was seen as a long-overdue validation of their fears. Leaders praised the government for taking a strong stand against state-sponsored anti-Semitism, viewing the expulsions and proposed IRGC designation as essential measures to protect their synagogues, schools, and community centres. However, this support was tinged with criticism from some quarters. Dr. Kylie Moore Gilbert, an academic who was previously held prisoner in Iran, argued that the government had acted too slowly, allowing Iran's influence networks to operate in Australia for too long before this crisis forced its hand. Predictably, Iran's response was one of swift and absolute denial. The Iranian Foreign Ministry absolutely rejected the accusations, dismissing them as baseless and ridiculous, and suggesting they were driven by Australia's domestic political considerations. Tehran swiftly threatened reciprocal diplomatic measures, which will almost certainly involve the expulsion of any remaining Australian officials and the formal severing of ties. This denial sets the stage for a period of heightened tension, not just diplomatically, but also in the covert sphere, where Iran may seek to retaliate through other means such as cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, or further proxy actions targeting Australian interests. The implications for security within Australia are complex. While ACO and the AFP have assured the public that the immediate network behind the attacks has been disrupted, the long-term risk remains. An increased police presence is now visible at Jewish community sites, a necessary but unsettling reminder of the ongoing threat. Furthermore, there are significant concerns within the Iranian-Australian community. Many who fled the regime now fear they could be targeted for harassment or surveillance by Tehran's remaining loyalists in Australia, or that their families back in Iran could face repercussions for the actions of the Australian government. Ultimately, Australia has crossed a diplomatic Rubicon. This bold stance against foreign interference and state-sponsored terror is a defining moment for our nation's foreign policy, aligning us more closely than ever with allies who view Iran as a primary global threat. It demonstrates a new willingness to absorb significant diplomatic and economic risk in defense of our national sovereignty and social harmony. While the immediate danger of the arson network may have passed, Australia has now entered a new and unpredictable chapter in its relationship with Iran and its place in the world, one where the challenges of protecting our open, multicultural society from distant autocracies have become starkly and dangerously real.